Hello, everybody. Welcome to Math 100, Liberal Arts Mathematics. I hope you are going to have a great time in this course. This course is probably very different from any of the mathematics courses you have ever taken in school. We are not going to emphasize graphs, equations, or even formulas. Yes, you will have some formulas, but the emphasis is going to be, throughout the course, the emphasis will be thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, and creative thinking, sort of outside the box. All right. And as we do so, we are going to start with the fundamentals, the most important foundations of mathematics, which is logic. That is what chapter 1 is about. In the first section, which is section 1.1, we are going to talk about fallacies. All right. This entire course, hopefully you will agree, that this entire course is going to be about the whole idea of don't be fooled, don't be deceived. Okay, and so you will learn how deceptive methods exist in, for instance, in the math of finance, things like statistics, probabilities, numbers in politics, and exponential growth, and the news and stories in news and current events that are, of course, data, statistics. There are all kinds of ways in which people could be deceiving or misleading you to believe something. All right. So at the core of this whole class is this whole idea of fallacies. And that's what we will be learning at the very beginning of this course. Okay. Now, behind me, I have a virtual background, which you probably will not recognize. This is one of the most well-known landmarks of the world. Can you guess what that is? This is a picture taken from the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, I love this picture, and I took this picture myself years ago because I wanted to remind myself that on the top you have that beautiful picture, right? The iconic San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. But underneath, not too many people will pay attention to this. But underneath are these incredible structures, powerful, a thing that is supporting that which is beautiful that you see above. Okay, but foundations are important, and so we are going to start with the foundations of mathematics, namely logic. And again, in this first section, we'll talk about different types of fallacies, so we can see why we actually need that logical structure. Let's begin with section 1.1. All right, what are fallacies? That's the first question we are going to address in chapter 1 and section 1, right? The topic of this section is fallacies. And by the way, before you start watching these videos, it's an extremely good idea for you to print out these notes with blanks and just stay engaged as you fill in these blanks as I go over these things. And so while you take notes, make sure you just don't listen to these videos while you do something else like cooking or playing games or whatever. These videos are not meant to be done while you do something else to kill time. Okay, so make sure you should act like you are actually in the classroom paying attention to the lecture as I write these things and speak. You should write down, take notes, and maybe extra notes somewhere else in the blank areas of these sheets, as well as filling in the blank. Okay, this will be a very important aspect, the engagement as you listen to me and as you watch these lecture videos. Okay, and every lecture video is followed by usually page 3 or sometimes page 4, sometimes page 2, by the quiz. Okay, so this is the quiz for section 1.1, which is what you're seeing on page 3 of this particular set of notes. And once you do this, and I recommend that you do this first, and then you go on to the online quiz, which is available through your Canvas module. All right, so that's how it works. And then after that, you should do your homework. And that's what you should do for every section we cover in this course. Okay, got that? All right, let's get started on the topic of fallacies. So here's the main question. What are some types of fallacies. This section will not be very long. I'm just going to list several topics or several fallacy types. And these are not exclusive, not mutually exclusive, and they are not comprehensive. All right, so this is not the list that everybody agrees to. This is just a list of many typical kinds of fallacies. All right, so here, by way of introduction, let me just say that a fallacy is a deceptive, faulty, and or illogical argument. All right, what kind of fallacy types are there? And I'm going to list 10 types of fallacies here. Let me make sure. Actually, you know what? I'm going to correct my first mistake. This is embarrassing. I only have 9. Okay, I used to have 10. I removed 1. Like I said, this is not comprehensive. And sometimes a fallacy could fall into 2 types. So there's nothing magical or infallible about this list. So I'm going to have 9 fallacy types here. All right, the first one, we will call this a personal attack. There's a Latin phrase associated with that, and that's something that you may also want to remember. I'm going to, because it's Latin, I'm going to italicize it, and it's called ad hominem. Hominem, of course, means personal or person. So what is an ad hominem, or what is personal attack? Okay, well, it is the maybe I should write down, or I should emphasize this. Okay, it is an attack, but not like saying, hey, you're stupid. That's not a personal attack. I mean, it is a personal attack, but when we talk about personal attack or ad hominem as a type of fallacy, we are making a specific reference to attacking the person's character, not related to the argument. All right, so you dismiss somebody's argument just because the person has a character flaw. That is called a personal attack. So here's an example. I don't believe anything that the man says. He smokes. Okay. Now, smoking, most people say it's a bad thing, right? And that's fine. Okay. I tend to believe that smoking is bad for a person's health. But just because somebody smokes, that does not make everything he says false, right? And so this is an attack on the person's character, not on the argument. And that is called a personal attack. We have a lot more information and examples and other details if you are to look in the book. So you may want to look into the text of the section 1.1 in your textbook. All right, and I can list many other ones, like, okay, I don't listen to my neighbor because my neighbor cheats on taxes. Who knows what else he cheats on? So if he says 1 + 1 is 2, I'm not going to believe it because, he cheats on his taxes. Now, that's not a good argument. So that's called a personal attack argument. Okay. So number 2, this one is called several types are called appeals to something. This is an appeal to ignorance. Now, appeal to ignorance doesn't mean calling somebody ignorant. Okay. Ignorance means lack of knowledge, right? So this one is basically saying, because we lack knowledge about something, it must be true or it must be false. All right. So again, the second line gives you the explanation of what this is. Claiming that something must be true because you can't prove it false. Well, just because you can't prove something false does not mean that it must be true. Here is an example of such a fallacy. I believe that an alien is living somewhere. Okay, an alien must be living somewhere out there because no one has proved that they cannot exist. Okay, because nobody proved otherwise, I am going to believe that aliens must exist. That is a faulty argument. Now, do aliens exist? The answer is I don't know. Okay, but this argument, the reasoning for your conclusion is not correct. Right, so that's the point about fallacies. When you use fallacy arguments, when you see a fallacy, when you use a fallacy in your argument, it does not mean that the argument itself must be wrong. Okay, we just cannot make that argument or the conclusion based on that line of reasoning. That is what fallacy is. Number 3, another appeal. This one is appeal to authority. Right? What is an authority? An expert's knowledge. a quote from somebody who is familiar with the field, that's an authority. You could appeal to the authority, and now that could actually be a good thing, but that in and of itself does not make any statement true. Okay, so this is the fallacy type in which you claim something is true because someone with an authority has said it. All right, so here's an example. The Dodgers are certain to win the World Series because an ESPN expert said so. Okay, maybe somebody who is a baseball reporter has said, you know what, I really, really believe that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series today. By the way, just to let you know, this statement, I actually first used it in the spring of 2020. Okay, and it turns out, and this is what I heard on ESPN, and by in the fall of 2020, actually this became true. The Dodgers did win the World Series. Okay, so like I said, the conclusion is not completely negated, or it's not necessarily false in the fallacy or in an explanation or a statement involving a fallacy. It just means that we cannot argue and establish the conclusion based on the argument, right? So just because an expert said that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series does not mean that they will. Okay, they may, and the reason because this is not good is because experts could also disagree among themselves, right? So what happens if another ESPN expert says, no, I think it's going to be the Rays or the Angels or the Yankees or something? Okay, all right. I did not mention the Red Sox on purpose. All right, let's go on to number 4. This one is also another appeal. This one will be appeal to consequence. It turns out this one, I didn't think this was such a big thing, but it really is. Okay, and so I highly recommend that you look at this book, a recent book entitled The Data Detective. In the book, The Data Detective, the author actually starts with this appeal to consequence and how important, how widespread this is. This is the fallacy where claiming something is true because that's what we want. Okay. In other words, this is saying this must be true because I want this to be true. Now that sounds so ridiculous, right? But it turns out humans are so biased and vulnerable that most of us really believe something just because we hope that that's going to happen. All right, so here's an example. I know it sounds silly, but it is so true. We will win the game because our fans will be disappointed otherwise. Okay, or if somebody else, it's like somebody saying, I really believe that smoking is not bad for you because I just love smoking. Okay, now you may not agree with that statement. Okay, but replace it with something you like. If somebody, for instance, told me, you know what, coffee is bad for you, I would probably dispute it. And I would say, no, that's not true. Coffee is actually good for you because that's what I heard. And it is true that I have heard that coffee drinking is actually healthful. But the real reason I believe that statement, that the coffee is good for you, is probably because I really, really like coffee and I am extremely biased. Okay. And even if we don't believe we are biased, we are. Okay, humans are desperately, incurably biased creatures. Okay, number 5. Let's go to the 5th one, and this is false dilemma. Sometimes it's also called, what a dilemma is. It's like choices that are hard to make, right? So this is called a limited choice. What is the limited choice fallacy? This is to erroneously assuming that there are only 2 choices where there may be other choices, options as well. So this is concluding something on the false assumption that only 2 possibilities exist. And usually these 2 possibilities are the extreme possibilities. Okay, so here's an example. Oh, you are not a coffee drinker, so you must like tea. Okay, and of course, the problem is here, right? I mean, somebody could be neither a coffee drinker nor a tea drinker. Somebody could be both. So this kind of a statement is assuming that you are one or the other, and you don't have any other options. Okay, so this is called the limited choice fallacy, and this really is also popular, much more so than you first would expect. So for instance, if you accuse somebody of being workaholic, like, hey, you work too much, you shouldn't be spending 15 hours a day in your office. And that man who is workaholic could say, what do you mean? You want my family to starve to death? And sarcastically. But see, the limited choice fallacy is right there by the implication that, hey, I have to work like crazy or my family will starve. Well, there's probably a third option, sort of in between those two extremes, right? So that's what I mean by that. Okay, so that's number 5. Let's go to number 6. But before that, I am going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to call this the first part of section 1.1. Most of these sections, I split the video into 2 parts, okay, just so that you may want to have a little break or something. Okay, so when we come back on section or part 2 of this section, we will start with fallacy type number 6.